Eldritch echoes, silence after midnight. Henry was not a fearful man. He had worked at the museum for years. Every night, he walked the same hallways, checked the same doors, turned off the same lights. The museum was like a second home, empty, quiet, familiar. History was just history, and the tales of the building's past as a Nazi prison were nothing more than whispers of a bygone era. But something had changed in the past week. Ever since the arrival of the new exhibition, the air felt heavier, as if the building itself had begun breathing differently. It was just a few display cases, an old uniform behind glass, yellowed documents, and a tarnished badge. And yet, something was off. It was ridiculous. Henry didn't believe in ghosts. That evening, everyone left earlier than usual. He bid farewell to the last staff member, turned the key in the front door, and exhaled. Just another night. A normal night. The silence in the museum was familiar. He knew it, even liked it. But tonight, it felt different. Too stretched. Too unnatural. He began his rounds as usual. The foyer, the painting gallery, the stairs to the upper floor, the basement. Darkness didn't bother him. He knew the building by heart. But as he passed by the exhibition hall, something made him stop. The uniform. It looked different. Had it always lain that way? He blinked. It must have been his imagination. The first whisper came later, faint, like a draft slipping through a crack in the wall. Not words, just a sound. Henry froze, holding his breath. Silence. He shook his head and walked on. The whispers returned, louder this time. They seeped through the walls from everywhere and nowhere at once. A conversation, though in a language he could not understand. He exhaled deeply. Just exhaustion, he told himself. He made his way down to the basement. It was always the source of trouble. Damp walls, aging pipes, the occasional rattle of metal expanding and contracting. That had to be it. The boiler, the pipes, the switches. Everything checked out. And yet, the unease remained. Then, a loud crash from above. Something heavy had fallen. Henry tensed. Someone had knocked something over. He sprinted up the stairs. In the foyer, an armored mannequin lay sprawled across the floor. It was heavy. There was no way it had simply tipped over on its own. But before Henry could think further, something whistled past his ear. An axe from one of the exhibits embedded itself in the wooden floor just inches from him. And then, he heard a voice.
"Don't move when I'm about to have fun with you, boy."
His heart pounded. He wasn't alone. Something lunged at him. He barely dodged before a glass display case beside him shattered, its shards slicing into his arm. He hit the ground, pain blooming in his shoulder and head. His flashlight tumbled away and died. Henry scrambled, pressing himself behind the nearest column. And then he saw it. A glow, hovering in the air where he had just stood. The shape slowly sharpened. Tall, draped in a long coat, a belt clasped tight around its waist. Not just a shadow, it was real. Without thinking, Henry ran. Get to the stairs, to the phone, call for help. A simple plan. A plan that might have worked. But as he reached the stairwell, the doors slammed shut with a thunderous bang. The specter was closing in. the air growing colder with every step. He could hear its heavy, deliberate footsteps. It wasn't rushing. It knew he had nowhere to go. But he wasn't alone. From the shadows, softer whispers emerged. Pleading voices.
He's returned to finish what he started. We'll never be free.
Henry didn't want to fight. He just wanted to leave. But as he looked at the wraith, he saw something else. At the edges of the room, near the floor, other figures crawled. Blurred faces, distorted, trapped, and among them, one was clearer than the rest. A girl. She locked eyes with him and pointed toward the basement. Henry had no choice. He waited for the specter to turn away and then moved silently, keeping low, slipping into the darkness of the basement. The old cells were freezing. He knew he wasn't alone. He heard faint moans, whispers from corners unseen. Faint figures darted away at his presence. And then he saw him. A hunched man with a thick beard, distinct and solid compared to the others. Though worn, there was still strength in him.
Welcome.
The figure spoke.
I am Elias. It's good to finally meet you. I see you've already encountered Johann. We had hoped never to see him again, but his soul must have returned along with his uniform.
The rabbi's voice was quiet.
Johann Metzger was never a kind man. Whether by his own hands or through his subordinates, he killed most of us here. Don't blame those who flee from him. He means to finish what he started. If you don't destroy that uniform, he will find a way back to the living.
Henry swallowed hard. The exhibit. The only way to stop Johann was to destroy his relics, still trapped within the museum. He needed a plan. The only thing that came to mind was fire. He remembered the emergency generator and quickly found a gasoline canister beside it. As he re-emerged upstairs, chaos reigned. Johann's specter raged, tearing through the museum in search of him.
You won't reach the exhibit alone.
Henry flinched. Behind him stood the girl, the one who had pointed him toward the basement.
You jumped as if you'd seen a ghost.
She smirked.
Well, I suppose that makes sense. I'm Zofia, and like I said, you won't get there alone. Stay here. I'll try to distract him.
Zofia vanished into the shadows. A moment later, a crash echoed from the far side of the hall.
You think you can hide? I will find you.
Johann shot toward the noise. Henry seized his chance. He darted to the exhibition room. The uniform lay inside the shattered glass case. He swung the canister, dousing it in fuel, pulled out his lighter. As he flicked it open, an unseen force grabbed him, slamming him against the wall. Pain exploded in his shoulder, warm blood dripping down his temple. His lighter skittered across the floor. Johann loomed over him.
You dare defy me?
The specter sneered.
Did you truly think you could best me?
The wraith raised a heavy axe. Henry's fingers found his taser. A desperate move. He fired. The electrodes flew through Johann, but they struck the metal insignia on the uniform. A spark jumped across the metals. Flames erupted. Johann let out an inhuman shriek. The walls trembled as fire consumed his relic. And then Henry saw it. Not just fire, but light. The spirits rose from the basement, freed at last. At midnight, the firefighters found Henry at the museum's entrance, bloodied and covered in soot. One knelt beside him.
What the hell happened here?
Henry looked at him, exhausted. In the distance, the clock struck midnight. For the first time in a week, the museum was silent.
You wouldn't believe me.
Henry replied calmly. The end.